Welcome back to the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner and Mud Gear Battle Alliance Pro, Evan Preparis. I got a guest with me online. Before we get to him, though, a quick word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by egg weights. If you're not familiar with egg weights, they're essentially small weights that you run with. It kind of works your arms at the same time. It works some of your cardio. And then I've also been using them for some cross training, so some martial arts, some punching type stuff. Just kind of give the arms a good workout. And they're small, really easy to travel with. They come in a little bag. Good stuff. If you head over to the Mud Gear Battle Alliance protein page, you can find a discount link in the sponsors and discount section on there. And before we get to our guests, another quick thing because I know I'm going to forget at the end. One, make sure you head over and vote at OCR Buddy. They are having a Best of the Community Awards, Best of OCR. So make sure you vote. There's a small race series. Definitely give Battle of the Lions a shout out on there. And then for the Eastern Hemisphere race, definitely give Hannibal Race a shout out. Give them a vote, please, because they have been a big supporter of strength and speed. They've been a big supporter of, OCR World Championships and one of the only qualifiers in the Middle East. So definitely head over and vote for Hannibal Race. And then finally, Mythic Race, head over and like their page. They're doing a contest right now where you make a donation to a charity, and then you get entered to win an OCR Dream Pass. It's like 10 different races or something insane. So you can donate, it's like $5 or something, and then you have a shot at winning some insane number of entries to races in 2022. So definitely check it out. It's for a good cause. All right, let's bring on our guest. I've had him on the podcast once before. He's an Army Ranger. He's a good friend. Now a official world champion because he just won Spartan Ultra World Championships 24. Mark Guadet, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Evan. Thanks for having me back. It's been a few months, but good to be back with you. Yeah.
And kind of funny story, I actually ended up in the unit you used to be in, and I name dropped you the other day, and someone was like, "Oh, I love Mark. Get him to come back here for a weekend." And I was like, "All right, I'm working on it." So we are working on it, and hopefully we get it back to come back to the Manhattan, Kansas area again in the future. So we're going to be talking about Spartan Ultra World Championships, and we will also be talking about the Spartan World Championships. So a little cold weather mountain running and then a little hot weather sand running. So let's start off with the Spartan Ultra World Championships. So tell me a little bit about how that event went and kind of what your thoughts were going into it and how it actually panned out.
So as you may know, I kind of hit the Ultra World Championships in Telluride, Colorado, mid PCS or permanent change of station, so mid Army move. So we left Washington D.C. and we hit the Spartan. I think it's race number 4 of the U.S. National Series in West Virginia en route. So 2 cars filled to the top, all the kids loaded up, and we stopped in West Virginia for a race, and then we continued on west. Taking a few more days to get out to Colorado. So once I got out there, I had, I believe, just about 3 weeks before I had to start work and 3 weeks to prepare for Telluride. So I got to train at altitude for 3 weeks, really for the first time in my life. And then my folks flew into town. My dad made the trip out there with me, and yeah, we put in, a good 24 hours of work, and I think my experience paid off with a generally inexperienced field. And I was able to run, 24 hours of a clean race, which I think made a huge difference, and just kept moving for 24 hours and ultimately prevailed.
So when you say 24 hours of a clean race, you did no penalties, or you just had a really good race, you mean?
So no penalties.
Oh, wow.
Throughout the entire race. And then I just ran a very conservative race early, which allowed me to, I'm pretty sure, I mean, if you could somehow test this, but I'm pretty sure I negative split the second half of that race.
Nice. Well, I mean, that running a clean race, especially an endurance race, I think not only obviously from the obvious, you don't have to do penalties making you fast, but mentally, I know personally, like when I get a tough obstacle and I hit it over and over again, lap after lap, I feel like it builds momentum. I just get this like emotional, like feeling of satisfaction. That's like, yes, I'm every second I'm moving is I'm gaining on people. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think with Spartan especially, about midway through each lap was the spear throw, which, it's got quite a bit of skill involved there, and, it's less brute strength. So that was like a win within each lap, hitting that spear each time.
That's insane. It's insane. You got that every lap.
Yeah. And then, as even generally simple obstacles kind of get hard as your hands get worn out, and Spartan obstacles are, I think, a little harder on the body than the tough mudder ones. Like, my hands were just demolished by the end of this race.
Yeah, right on. So you've done 12-hour toughest. Have you done world's toughest too? I can't remember.
Well, I did it was one of my very first obstacle races of all time. So I did the 2018 in Atlanta.
I thought you were there, but I didn't know you at the time, so I wasn't 100% positive. And you came in top 10, correct?
I finished fourth.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go. I was on the team division, so I wasn't paying too much attention to the individual one. So I knew you were up there. Yeah. Good stuff. So for our listeners, 2018 for our listeners, that was the very cold year. I'm sorry. 2018 was the cold year. That was the year everything froze. So compare, World's Toughest to Spartan Ultra 24-hour Championship in Telluride.
So, yeah, two very different races. And I was two very different athletes too. So that was I think it might have been my second official OCR race, second or third of all time. And I'd never done a Tough Mudder before. So I was very inexperienced. I didn't have all the right equipment. I wore a wetsuit for about 20 hours, and I was pretty much shivering. And it was just pure grit that got me to that fourth place finish. I failed a lot of obstacles, did a lot of penalty loops. But the conditions were brutal, just in and out of the water. I think mentally was extremely difficult. And a very different course in Telluride. So almost 2,000 feet of gain on each lap of a 7-mile loop. And we started 9,500 feet is where the transition area was. And each lap we get up to, over 11,000 feet of elevation. And so you start to feel the elevation, especially as the race wore on, and then it was cold, but probably about the same temperature as Atlanta, but the difference is we weren't in and out of the water. And I think the other thing that really comes to mind is the way the carries just wear on you in Spartan versus Tough Mudder. Like, nothing, we never really had to pick anything heavy up, which makes things significantly easier. Every lap in Telluride, we had a brutal bucket carry that just seemed to go on forever. And we would have that thing on our shoulder for 4 to 5 minutes every single lap. And doing that, 10, 11, 12 times just really wears down the body. So that was like the one obstacle I really didn't look forward to with each lap.
Gotcha. Any specific gear recommendations you used for the Spartan Ultra World Championships, and if they differ from what you would use for a toughest or world's toughest mudder?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest difference was my shoe choice. I could really go with a less aggressive lug and a lot more cushioning. And kind of one rule of thumb that I do in most ultra events, I generally start in my least cushioned shoe and then slowly work over the 24 hours into my most cushioned shoe. And that was one thing that was quite a bit different in Atlanta. A lot of those, more cushioned Hoka type shoes, like, just didn't do very well in and out of the water, and especially in the mud. I just remember slipping and sliding around quite a bit in those shoes. So that was one thing I would recommend. And then I think in Telluride, it was just the kind of the importance, like we've talked before, and it's something we learned in the military, is the importance of layering, of having something warm on your skin, like something with a, I wore like a thin wool base layer, and then that did pretty well throughout the day. And then as the night wore on, I had different layers of like windbreakers that, like, from super light to a little bit more, that I just went up with as the temperatures dropped.
Were there athletes wearing neoprene at Telluride or no?
No, I don't think I saw anyone wearing neoprene. Maybe a neoprene hat here and there, but nope, nothing like the Tough Mudder packing list. Now I brought all of that stuff, but fortunately I did not need it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. So was there no water on? Like, did you not get wet at all on course?
There was no water. Yep.
Okay.
No water. So very more pleasant.
Yeah, that'll make a huge difference. Because the neoprene is, I mean, we need it for the water, essentially. I'm sure people are enjoying my New York accent also, side down.
Yeah.
All right. So, awesome. So, super good race. When did you move? You said you started out at a slower pace. I remember checking the leaderboard fairly early, and they were talking about some of the other athletes. I know your name wasn't specifically mentioned, and I was like, no, you got to give him time. And, essentially when I woke up the next morning, it was like, I checked a couple times and I saw you crossing the line first. So I was super excited. So when did you start climbing up the ranks, and when did you move into first throughout the race? So
I was really in the top 5 from the start to finish. But generally, the coverage oftentimes is just like whoever's in the lead. So Miguel Medina went out extremely fast and strong, and he looked very good. And I just, kept telling myself, I got to find that pace that I can sustain throughout. This isn't a 12-hour race. It's a 24-hour race. And I'd say about lap 3, I ended up linking up with a good buddy of mine, Tyler Veerman. And we just happened to kind of come out of the transition area at the same time, I think on lap 2 or 3. And just got chatting and got into a rhythm. And the two of us kind of started picking up, we picked up whoever was in third place, probably by lap 4. Moved into second not too long after. And then we were still back about 20 to 30 minutes on Miguel, who was just laying down an incredible pace. And I told Tyler that let's make our move in the night. And so just to stay comfortable, if he can maintain that and hold us off, then he 100% deserves to win, but let's work together. And Tyler and I stayed together for, the next 18 hours.
Oh, wow.
And we caught Miguel about hour 16 or 17, and then really just separated from the field where by lap, I think 9 or 10, we already knew that we were going to 1-2 this thing, which was a good feeling. And we talked throughout how we're gonna deal with this when it comes down to the end. And
yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, we decided that we'll go until we realize that we're gonna have 1 lap left, and as we come into the transition area, it's just game on for that last lap. So that was the kind of the plan we devised, I'd say, but on lap 6 probably to 8, somewhere in there. And then things kind of just didn't really play out that way. I'm sure Spartan was really hoping for that. But I ended up ending up being the only one to do the final lap 12. So kind of anticlimactic, if you will.
Yeah. Gotcha. And did you know that he had not gone out for another lap? Or wasn't going to make it to the next lap?
Right on lap 10, I was like, all right, man, we got 1 more lap together, and then we're going to, we're going to go all out. And Tyler's like, I don't know, I might have just 1 more left in me.
Oh, wow.
Looking at the watch, I was like, man, we definitely have time for 2. And he was kind of at the point, physically he was extremely strong, but he he'd never been here. He'd never done a 24-hour race. And I think he was like, he had met his goals.
Yeah,
To that
gotcha.
point. He'd gone farther than he'd ever gone. Second place was locked up. And for me, I'd been here many a time, and I was like very much focused on winning this thing, and I was ready to throw down. So on lap 11, with probably about a mile or so left on the lap, we're chatting, and I said, "Are you 100% committed to finishing after this lap?" And he said, "Yep." He said, "This is it for me." And I said, "All right, well, I'm going to make this easier on a lot of us, and I'm going to separate right now." And I opened up, came into the transition area, and I didn't even transition. I just
kept going.
Told my wife I wanted, my watch had died. I said, "I want my watch. I want my other watch, and I want a pair of running gloves," because I was wearing some thick work gloves I'd been wearing through the night. And I came in, and my dad was just waiting there with him, and I didn't even trade out water or anything. I just grabbed him, and I hightailed it out of there and really it was one, to put the race away for my own sake, and then also for Tyler. I knew if he came in anywhere close to me, there was gonna be a lot of pressure put on him by his pit, his family, whoever, to get on the course and go race.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
I just tried to put it away, right there at the end of lap 11. I was able to get a couple minutes on him, and I knew if he had a change of heart or they forced him back out there, he wasn't going to be able to close that gap.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great story. Yeah, I had not heard that. I was not tracking that. Super interesting. Yeah, you mentioned kind of, setting out your goals, and then you felt like, I guess he felt like he had accomplished them. So, parts of his brain essentially start turning off. And for some of our listeners, for me, for Tough Mudder, World's Toughest Mudder this year, it was the first time I went to the race, not thinking of it as a 24-hour race, but thinking of it as a 25-and-a-half-hour race. And that helped me, I know mentally made it a lot easier, because I was like, no, it's a 25-and-a-half-hour race, because that's how much extra playroom you have at the end. Versus previous years when you hit the 24-hour mark, it's very easy to be like, all right, well, I have time for one more, but I've already hit 24 hours. So
that's a really, I think that's a great mindset to go into these races with. And now that you mention it, when I went out on lap 12, which is crazy because I went out at 23 or 22 and change, so right around 23 hours.
Mm-hmm.
No, it had to be 22 because laps were taking a while. So I went out around 22 miles on my last lap, and I came in just over 24 hours for my final time. But on that last lap, I saw two people. That's it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, it was a very difficult race, but, we had the same thing. We had, that additional hour and a half on the back end. And it was kind of funny. About 2 miles into the lap, I caught up to an older gentleman, and I said something to wow, I'm glad to see you out here. And he just, he said, "Hey, I signed up for a 24-hour race, not a 22-hour race." I thought that was awesome. But it was me, that older gentleman, and then Josh Fiore, who needed the 11th lap. It was his 11th lap. He needed one more to lock up that third podium spot.
Gotcha.
Which was wild. Yeah. So I think most of us do go in with that 24-hour mindset, and maybe it is better to go in with that a 25-hour.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was mentally, as we approached the 24-hour mark, mentally I felt much better, because I was like, well, no, I know I have time for 2 more laps at this point, I don't remember what the time was, whatever, but yeah, it made the decision to go out again easier. Even though because there, in Tough Mudder, once it's after 8 a.m. or something, you can stop and be considered an official finisher. So,
right.
All right. So that's Spartan Ultra World Championships. Again, congrats. Super awesome.
Thank you.
Let's switch to the other side of the spectrum. You got to go to Abu Dhabi for the Spartan World Championships held in the Middle East this year, which I was very tempted to go to. And it almost happened, but didn't quite pan out that way. So tell me a little bit about that experience.
So I had a 5 weeks post Telluride to get ready for Abu Dhabi. And I honestly didn't know I was going to be able to get to Abu Dhabi until the day before Thanksgiving. And so on a Wednesday night, I found out, and I flew out early the next week. So just I found it a few days before I flew.
And that was a military holdup, right? You were waiting for something to get approved, correct?
So currently, there is no personal travel allowed into the CENTCOM area of responsibility right now.
Oh my goodness!
I needed an exception to policy, and it just so happened that when I looked up who was the approving authority for the trip, it was a mentor of mine who I knew from back my time at Fort Riley. So I was able to reach out straight to him, and he signed it immediately, whereas this was taking 3 to 4 weeks, with most of them being denied at this point. So I was very fortunate. But coming out of Telluride, a 24-hour race beats you down pretty good. And the Army beats you down pretty good too. So I finished the race in Telluride, went to the award ceremony that night, and the next day I drove back and I signed in to Fort Carson the next day.
Nice.
So, and my welcome to Fort Carson was a nice little 3-week field exercise, with really 2 of those weeks being very intense, where I was working reverse cycle. So I was working at generally like a 7 p.m. to a 10 a.m. Each day for 2 weeks. So on one hand, not ideal for any type of preparation to get ready to go race in the desert. However, it forced me to kind of recover and take the 2 weeks off. I think I was able to sneak in about 20-mile weeks those next 2 out of the next 3 weeks after Telluride. So I recovered pretty well, but then I only had 2 weeks to get ready for really 2 good solid training weeks before I had to taper down to the race. So I did a 40-mile week and a 50-mile week, and that's the preparation I had. And I went to work on Tuesday morning, and left immediately from work and flew to Chicago Tuesday. I think I left Tuesday afternoon, and then I flew out of Chicago into Turkey. And then from Turkey, I flew into the UAE, and I arrived actually Thursday morning. So I leave Tuesday from the States, arrive Thursday morning, and the race was on Friday, which was not ideal. So I get in early morning on Thursday. I get a few hours of sleep in the hotel in Abu Dhabi. And then we have about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive out to the venue, which was in, the sand dunes.
So quick question, so I haven't been to Abu Dhabi, I've been to Dubai, but basically Dubai, there's a city and you literally drive to the city limits and there's just sand dunes. So why was the race 2 hours outside of Abu Dhabi instead of 10 minutes outside of Abu Dhabi? I guess that's what I didn't understand. What was special about that piece of land? Could you tell?
So we were saying that the entire drive out, why couldn't we just have the race here? But once we got to the venue, we could see, it was got the the Morib Dune, which is the largest dune in the UAE, was really like the focal point of the race. So we ran up it and down it during the race, and that's kind of that epic photo.
Okay.
With the spear throw with the monster dune in the background. So there were some just like gnarly sand dune climbs that we had that I'd never done anything like in my life. So I think they just wanted that really like, monumental or like epic hill in the race.
Yeah, because for the UAE, it's a spectacle and it's a selling point, right? So they're showcasing their gigantic. The UAE's been big on like, we have the biggest, insert anything, right? Dubai has the tallest tower. They have the largest pane of glass in their aquarium indoors. They have an indoor ski mountain, right? They're it's part of their allure for their tourist business. Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think they also had the largest like sand dune rally of all time the night before the race.
I gotcha.
So the race happened to fall on the 50th anniversary of the unification of the Emirates. So for them,
cool.
to become the UAE. So it was a huge national holiday for that entire week. Basically, no one was working in the country, and everyone's out celebrating. And it just so happens that out there in the Leeward Desert at the Morib dunes is a huge pastime in that country for people to load up in their four-wheel drive vehicles and go dune bashing. Well, they weren't happy that there were these all these people crashed in these tents right there in their playground, and they all night long were just thousands of these vehicles just driving around our tents. And it really went all night long until about 4 or 5 in the morning, which was just wild. It was something I'd like never seen before, but thousands of cars just crawling over these dunes and revving their engines and just burning out and drifting, and it was crazy. It was like an all-night party. And there were food trucks everywhere and just a lot of noise. We were sleeping in these like pop-up tents that had like a carpet floor and like a bed that you would see at like like NTC at Fort Irwin or something,
Yeah.
or like a transient tent in Afghanistan.
Yeah. It's camping, but it's not quite glamping, but it's a step up from normal camping. It's
yeah. Step. So that was we stayed in the tent for the night before the race, and I woke up on Friday morning just feeling extremely jet lagged, and my legs had like zero vascularity in them. That was like the first thing I noticed is I think with just the 30 hours of travel,
mm-hmm.
And just being, jammed into the plane, I think the blood had just pooled in my legs. And so I did a quick shakeout run on, what was that? Yeah, Thursday evening, and then again on Friday morning before the race, and just testing out all the different equipment. And I soon realized that I was not prepared with the right equipment for this race. Most notably being your standard gaiter was not going to be enough in this fine sand. So since we were racing Friday afternoon, I did the best I could. I took duct tape and my standard gaiter, and I tried to sandproof my shoe as much as possible and tape my gaiter to my shoe, which worked for about the first 2 miles of the race.
I love it. You sound like someone who's brand new to OCR. He's putting the duct tape on their shoes, and
yeah,
and just like the newbies at OCR, it usually doesn't last the whole race.
No, it was a completely desperate move, and I was not the only one to do this. But it was very evident who had been there for weeks or who had been there for at least a week to train in this terrain. So the gaiters that I used, I had used out here in very sandy areas where I could submerge my entire foot, and I was having no issues. And the sand was coarse enough that it wouldn't penetrate the shoes I was wearing, especially with my gaiters on. However, it was so fine. It was like that moon dust.
Yeah, Iraqi moon dust.
Yep. That it just found its way in. So the people who didn't have the issue, they, for one, had desert gaiters, which cover your entire shoe.
Interesting.
And just having a desert gaiter wasn't enough either. You then had to either hot glue gun, super glue, or sew the gaiter to the shoe to make it basically like the shoe and the gaiter as one.
Oh, weird.
And that's what you see with a lot of the guys who had been there for.
So is that what Atkins had?
That's what Atkins had. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So anyone that was there for like more than a day had figured that out, but duct tape was the best I could do.
Yeah.
So about 2 to 3 miles in, the tape, gets filled with sand and comes off, and we ran down a very steep dune where you end up in sand, like about up to your calf. And it was right down to the bucket carry. And right when I got to the bottom of the hill, I just knew it was going to be a long, remaining 10, 11 miles. And I ran some of the most painful miles of my life wearing shoes that just felt like they were 2 sizes too small. The rest of the race, like I felt pretty good, given the circumstances. And I kind of slowly made my way up the field and finished 14th in a very, very deep, strong international field.
Yeah, I mean that's a great finish. Especially, I mean, you ran the 24-hour race a month before. Like it takes more than a month, especially when you're competing at that level, to really come back and throw down again. So that's still a great finish. I'm still impressed. That's phenomenal.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a little disappointing because generally, like the Americans, we really dominate the World Championship races. And I think if you look back at 2019 in Tahoe, there's probably 12 or 13 or Americans in the top 20. And that was like not the case. There was 2 Americans in the top 20 this year. And but it was an extremely deep field, way deeper than we've seen in Tahoe in the past. And what was really cool is we saw, I want to say 12 or 13 different countries in the top 20.
That is cool. I always like that.
Yeah, just super cool to hear in all the different languages and seeing all the sponsors that you don't see elsewhere. And just to see that the sport is growing, beyond the States, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I like that Spartan held it overseas. I think that's a cool touch there. And as people on my podcast know, I've been a big fan of the Hannibal race for a long time, and I've really enjoyed the couple trips I've taken over there to run their series. So, I don't particularly like Spartans that much, but I did strongly consider flying over for the World Championships just because I thought it would be like a very unique experience. And I hadn't been to Abu Dhabi yet, but I'd been to other parts of UAE. So, it was funny as you mentioned that moon dust. I was just giving one of my friends like a quick kind of rundown on some first aid stuff the other day, and I took out I have like a little army first aid kit that I keep in my car, and I took it out and I pull out the tourniquet and like dust goes shooting out, and I was like, that's Iraqi dust. I was like, I haven't touched this. It's been a while. Yeah, but it was still, that particular first aid kit hadn't been to Iraq in, I don't know, 10 years, more than 10 years, and it was still on there, like still stuck in random nooks and crannies there in the first date on the tourniquet.
Yeah, you can. I don't think you can ever really get rid of that stuff. It just appears in every bag and shoe, and
yes, so fine.
Yeah, well, you might get your chance next year. The rumor is they're going to go back to the UAE next year.
Oh, really?
But host it in a different part of the country.
Yeah, I can see that. Maybe move closer to Dubai.
Yeah, maybe something. I think they were talking like out of the dunes, but I mean, everywhere I looked, it looked like a sand dune to me. So,
so I know. So when we went to Dubai, we did do a sand dune tour where, again, we got to ride in those sand buggies and someone drove us around at a, aggressive speed where I questioned my safety, but that's all right. It was still fun. But I know Ashley Samples and Dustin have been over to the UAE for Wadi Adventure Race, which is OCR in the middle of the desert. So who knows?
Yeah, I guess they said there is a region in the country that has some woodlands and some mountains.
Really?
So I'm not sure what part of UAE that is, but
I've never.
That was pretty interesting to see.
So when we were going to Kuwait, we looked at a hydrology map of Kuwait, and it's my favorite because it's just one color because there's no fresh water. It's just one color map, and you're like there's no. It's like, oh, there's no fresh water. That's why. So it's all from the ocean there. All right, let's jump over to what do you got planned for 2022? Get my year right here.
Yeah, so right now I don't have anything on the calendar other than really the first couple months of the year. I'm going to do a trail series out here like January, February, out here in Colorado Springs. And that's really running anywhere from about I think it's about an 8K up to like a 25K, and just it's in the mountains. And that's really just going to be some base building type race work. And then I'm going to prep for Jacksonville. So race 1 of the U.S. National Series for Spartan again. And then I think most of my A races are going to be late in the season. I'm going to see where the Spartan Ultra World Championship falls again. And then I'm really eyeing a return to World's Toughest Mudder.
Ooh.
I think going to Florida would be a lot of fun, and I definitely, was quite jealous of watching you guys out there in Laughlin. It looked like a lot of fun, and I really want to get that orange jacket. Just a personal goal. I want to go hit 100 miles.
Yeah.
At a World's Toughest Mudder. And but yeah, I think I'll probably do the Spartan US National Series again. And then I think lastly is, well, at the time I was like, I don't know if I really would want to go back to the UAE, especially on the travel schedule that I was on, because it was like 60 hours of travel and 60 hours on the ground. It was very, very tight. And I would try to do things differently, but it kind of lit a fire to get back out there and race against that international field again. Because I know I'm better than 14th. And I also, this one thing I forgot to mention is we raced a team relay in there, and Team USA was a little banged up. With Logan was sick, and Annie Doobie, who finished second in the women's race, was a little injured. So we put a team together, and we led for about 75% of the race, but the French, the Russians, and the Canadians eventually took us in the final leg. So we were left off the podium, and I'd really like to get back and do that team event again as well. So I think World's Toughest Mudder, Spartan Ultra World Championship, if it works out, depending how close they are, U.S. National Series for Spartan, and the Spartan World Championships back in the UAE if I can race against that field again.
Real quick for our listeners, how do they do the team event for Spartan World Championships?
So really interesting format. It was a three-person team, and you had to have at least one female. So some teams elected to have two females, and then you can any team member can run any leg. So we were one of the few teams that I ran the first leg. So most teams had their female run the first leg. So it was a 2-mile leg. It had the fewest obstacles. It had some pretty gnarly terrain, but it also had the most runnable section. So our idea was to try to jump out to a big enough lead in the runnable terrain with the fewer obstacles that we could build up a lead and then hang on late. So I ran first, and then the second leg was the longest leg, and it had 2 carries in it. So we went with David Magida, who announced the race the day before, but he was the only one fresh. So we felt like, he's got the legs, and then he's a bigger, stronger guy, so he can beast the 2 carries. And then the final leg, Alex Walker, she took a final leg, which had the spear throw, which she felt confident in, and it was the shortest leg. It was about 1.8 miles. So, and it had like a really technical section and then a very steep descent down into the final stretch. So we, like, looking back, we probably miscalculated, and I probably should have done the second leg, which was the longest leg. But the way the race played out is we had about a 2-minute and 30 or 2-minute and 40-second lead after the first leg on the Canadian team. And I think we had almost 4 to 5 minutes on the French. And after we passed off the second leg, we had about a 40-second lead on the who was it? The French. Yeah. And then the Russians and the Canadians weren't too far back, but they were handing off to their top athletes for the last leg. And so we didn't give Alex a big enough gap, and they swallowed her up that final leg. So we led for most of the race. But a lot of the teams closed with their strongest athletes, which was a tough spot to put her in.
Gotcha. Well, still sounds like a fun event and a fun way to end the weekend after busy, very busy weekend. For the two, both Ultra World Championships and for Spartan World Championships, did they debut anything new, right? Like, I know World's Toughest, they'll debut new obstacles, or this year their theme was like mashups. Did they debut anything new, or was it more like this, what makes this event so special is, 1, the level of competition, and 2, the terrain and venue and they're using?
Yeah, so really, as far as obstacles, there's nothing new. In Telluride, I think they were really debuting just something at that altitude.
Yeah, that is impressive.
Yeah, and it was also like I had never been out to that area. I knew I'd seen like Breckenridge and Vale and Aspen, kind of some of the more touristy areas. And I was like, man, this is beautiful. Well, Telluride just like puts those places to shame. And I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was in like the Swiss Alps out there. The views were like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was insane. And then in Abu Dhabi, it's hard to say what they had planned, because usually they do throw some wrinkles in, and they had some interesting configurations on the rig and the final rig there, where it was like monkey bars to a twister to rings. Like, it was a little bit different, but nothing crazy. But Spartan also, their obstacles didn't make it into the region. They got caught at some port.
Oh my goodness.
And they had to go like last minute rent obstacles from, I think, Spartan Arabia. So when we got on the course, the kit was just like a little off. Like it was the old surfaces. So on like Olympus, which is the one where you move like laterally across with like the handholds, which Spartan's made significantly more difficult over the years, like in the States. It was like the old version where it was like less steep and it was made of wood. So really the obstacles were easier than normal and everything was dry in the desert. So
yeah.
Other than the spear, there's really nothing failable.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's so tricky. You see all these like international races and countries going overseas, and there's just so much logistical and backside stuff that makes it a little bit of a nightmare when you're trying to do a race in multiple countries. It's a lot more complicated than I think most of us take, at first glance realize. So
absolutely, and as someone, we both spent a lot of time in the Middle East, I was really entertained by speaking with some of the Spartan staff and people putting the event together, because they, things just weren't going as smoothly as possible. And, I just had to laugh and just, you chalk it up to, this is the Middle Eastern culture.
It's the culture, man. Yeah. That's really funny.
Different part of the world, but they were laughing because, just nothing was going off smoothly like they had planned. And I just said, like, hey, it's just, you just got to roll with the punches.
That's right. So for some of our listeners, I'll give you a quick example from some of the military deployments, right? So we'd be going on a raid with the Iraqi army, and we'd be like, all right, we're going to meet you, or we'll be going on like a clearance operation. I was like, we'll meet you here tomorrow morning, 07. We'll step off at 7:15. And they're like, yes, inshallah. Which means, if God wills it, right? And I'm like, no, I will be here at 7, and we will step off at 7:15. They're like, yeah, God willing, we will do that. And I was like, no, like, I'm 100% going to be here, and then you show up at 7 and no one's ready. And you're like, what the you're like scrambling. And it's like so.
Yeah, time is not the same as we see in the States. And then there's also just like everything is a barter.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not used to in the West. And I got a kick out of, there were supposed to be llamas at the race venue, and everyone was asking for the llamas. And apparently they had reached a deal for the llamas to show up, and then the llama keeper wanted more money. It came time to execute, so there were no llamas at the venue. And just, a lot of things kind of fell through like that. But even coming from the airport, I got a cab ride about 30 minutes from the airport to the hotel for one raid, and I talked to some of the Canadians who said they paid like almost twice as much as me, just not knowing that you've got a barter.
Yeah.
That everyone's going to look to get as much as they can. And it's just, it's expected that you come back and you guys go back and forth and barter and come to an agreement, and that's what you roll with. And if you don't, you're just going to end up paying way more than you really should.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's another good example. Another one from some of our, we'd be paying like a village leader to pay for his security force, right? And they'd be like, yeah, and then it'd be like, well, I gave you $10,000, but, that all hasn't made it down to the lowest level. And it's like, yeah, well, I took like $5,000 off the top, and then I distribute the rest. And it's like, whoa, like you getting $5,000 wasn't part of the deal. He's like, no, it's part of the deal. Like, it's just, it's like they expected people to skim off the top before passing it down. And it was just like, and like everybody knew it was happening and no one seemed to care, right? Whereas in America, we're like, no, this is the amount I'm giving you, and this is, it gets distributed equally below, and, yeah, just different world. It's, it's, I find it very fun to learn some of the nuances, and I've got I'm not going to tell the whole story on the podcast, but I have a great story of Kuwaiti culture and before like online and dating apps, how they would interact and pick up girls, because you're not allowed to go and meet them. You're not allowed to talk to females in public, right? So they had some very like kind of like sneaky methods, which if you tried in America, you'd probably either get maced or have the cops called on you. It's a really funny story. So if anyone ever wants to hear that story, hit me up in person. I will gladly tell it to you. All right. We're going to get going. Before we go, any quick word, any sponsors, brands, friends, etc. you want to give a shout out to, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, really the only one now. I'm kind of starting fresh with some new sponsors this year. So I'm really the only one that I'm sticking with for right now is Firefly Recovery. So it's a device that really helped me get that swelling out of my legs post-travel, and I really should have been wearing them on the flight, but they're like a device that goes on the side of your leg and just increase the blood flow to your lower leg. Essentially gives you the same stimulus as walking. So I should have been wearing those on the plane. That's my fault. But I put them on the legs when I arrived, and got my legs to where they could be, running at full speed on by the time Saturday rolled around. So Firefly Recovery is legit. Recommend anyone checks those out to promote recovery.
So real quick, one follow-up for sponsor-related question. So the Spartan Pro Team, is that no longer a thing, or are they still a thing, but they just have significantly reduced benefits from some of the previous years?
So I think it's still to be determined at this point.
So was it a thing in 2021? Because I there was some drama, and then I didn't follow it as closely, and I lost track, to be honest with you.
There wasn't really an official team. However, the main benefit of having a season pass to race for free was extended from 2020. So we all, we weren't all paying for.
Gotcha.
So for me personally, like that's really all I can ask for is if I can just race as much as I want at a reduced rate. I'm happy as can be.
Yeah.
But I think there will be a team in 2022. We just don't know what that's going to look like yet. But I think there will be some support coming in. So hopefully we can revive the program and bring it back.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. Absolutely. All right, we're going to get going. Before we get going, a couple of quick shout-outs. Again, make sure you head over to OCR Buddy and drop some votes. Battle of the Lions race, drop some votes for them. OCR World Championships, drop some votes for Hannibal race, especially those votes for a brand like Hannibal race really mean a lot. So definitely head over and please give OCR Buddy some votes over there. I'm not sure when voting closes, so as soon as this podcast publishes, make sure you head over there and vote. 2, again, the Mythic Race event. Make sure you head over, 1, and check them out. It's an event going on in April. It's the same week as one of the Infinite Hero Challenge events, so I won't be there. But if you're in the Midwest and you're not going to Infinite Hero Honor Challenge, you should be going to the Mythic Race, put on by William Schell there out in the middle of Missouri. Make sure you donate to his fundraiser and then get a chance to win the OCR Dream Season Pass there. Let's see what else. On the military front, so I wanted to share this news last week. So one of the guys I went to Special Forces qualification course with, so he was actually on my small team at Robin Sage. He had earned a Silver Star a couple years ago. It actually just got upgraded because it was put in as a Congressional Medal of Honor, and it got downgraded. It just got switched back, so it is now a Congressional Medal of Honor, which is freaking awesome, and I'm super excited for him. So Earl Plumley, super excited for that. It like literally made my day. Great guy who's super fun and cute, of course. And he had like the funniest story that we used to make him tell all the other instructors because it was like super graphic about some of the things that happened in his youth. But yeah, congratulations to Earl, and big announcement there. And then finally, I got articles publishing like everywhere. So Mudgear, head over to Mudgear. On their Mudgear blog, I got a first-timer's guide to World's Toughest Mudder. I have a World's Toughest Mudder comparison article comparing it to other years. And then I've got a wintertime OCRs to get you moving. So a shout out to some of the events going on in January, including Casey Timber Challenge. If you live in the Kansas City area, if you're further up north, Wisconsin area, there's Abominable Snow Race, which David Mainprice and Sydney Morris are both building for. So Battle of Lion staff's heading out there, do some builds for Abominable Snow Race in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And then the same weekend, Spartan and Tough Mudder actually also have races going on, but they're, I think, in SoCal and in Florida, I want to say. I'm not sure, but they're both warmer climates. So if you actually want a snow experience, Casey Timber and Abominable Snow Race are the two places you go last weekend in January. OCR report, I got 2 articles over there. What happens to you physically after 24 hours of OCR and what happens to you mentally after 24 hours of OCR. So that's a fun one to read. I used some of my experience from the 15-ish or so 24-hour OCR events I've done, and about 10 other OCR events I've done, ultra OCR events I've done, to kind of share some of my input for that. And then on top of that, OCR Buddy, I got some articles over there now. First one's up. It was just talking about the Rugged Maniac experience. So Rugged Maniacs has a multi-lap experience called Rugged X. It's a quick article on that. And then a quick guide to Play Out. So if anyone's looking for some stocking stuffers, you can head over to Play Out. Essentially, they're cards that you can, flip over and it tells you what exercise to do. It's scalable, so it's got like easy, medium, and hard. And you can, I do it with my daughter who's 6. We cut it down to like a third of what you're supposed to do. And we just have a little bit of fun and get moving. All right. Other than that, head over to teamstrengthspeed.com. Also have articles up there. So one, Strength and Speed Development Team is now open applications for 2022. So if anyone's looking to get some access to some, expert advice, physical therapists, nutritionists, physical trainers, and some free stuff from Strength and Speed. I do have some not season passes. I do have some race entries that I need to give away at some point this year. So I'll be giving them out to the Strength and Speed team. You can head over to our website in the blog, and there's information on how to apply through that. And then finally, obviously on the website, there is access or links to all my books, digital and hard copy, including Ultra OCR Man from Special Force Soldier to Record-Setting Professional Obstacle Course Racer, and Bleg mitts are available. I have another set of extremes that should be here any day now. So, and then obviously the lights, small, medium, and large are all available. And then finally, if you want to poke around the website, there is a sneak peek on my newest book, which is coming out in 2022, and actually has Mark's name in there and some of his quotes, which he doesn't even know about, and I'm telling him now for the first time. So, Mark, I will shoot those over to you sometime in the next couple of weeks to make sure it meets your approval, and your information will go in there too.
Man, that's awesome. I look forward to it.
All right. Sorry to talk for a while. Mark, thanks again for squeezing me in. And we will catch you in 2022.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. Always a good time.
All right.